I took the job because I was 23 and I owed a credit card company $4,000. That's the whole reason. There isn't a better one. I was working days at a print shop making just enough to cover rent and the minimum payment, and I sat down one night and did the math and worked out that at that rate I'd finish paying it off sometime around my 31st birthday. So when I saw a listing for an overnight site attendant at a self-storage place about 20 minutes from my apartment, $16.50 an hour, 10 at night to 6 in the morning, Tuesday through Saturday, I applied that same evening. The interview lasted about 11 minutes. The day manager was a guy named Dale. He asked me 3 things. Could I stay awake? Did I have a clean license? And did I mind being alone? I said yes, and no. He hired me on the spot. I found out later that 3 people had held that job before me in the previous year, and every one of them quit inside a month. I want to be clear about something, though. At the time, when I heard that, I assumed it was because the job was boring. And it was boring. I need you to understand how boring it was, because it matters for everything that comes after. The facility was 4 buildings on about 6 acres, backed up against a rail line. Building A was climate controlled, all interior corridors. B and C were the same layout. D was outdoor drive-up units, the roll door kind you see in movies. 418 units total. There was a gate at the front with a keypad. Every tenant had a 4-digit code, and every single time anybody punched that code, the system logged it. Time in, time out. Which unit? It logged me too, because I had a code, and I had to badge through the interior doors on A, B, and C to do my rounds. That log is the whole story. Just hold on to the fact that it exists. My job was sit in the office, watch 9 camera feeds on 3 monitors, do a walkthrough at 1 in the morning and another at 4, and write 1 line in a paper logbook after each one. 0104, walkthrough complete, all secure. That was it. That was the entire job. I brought a laptop and I got through more television in those 8 months than I have in the rest of my life put together. One more thing you need before this goes anywhere. The corridors in B and C ran on motion sensors. You'd badge through the door at the end and the first bank of lights would come on over your head. And then as you walked, the next bank would trigger and the one behind you would drop out about 40 seconds later. So you move through the building inside this little traveling pocket of light, with dark in front of you and dark closing up behind you. You get used to it. I genuinely did. For 5 months it didn't bother me at all. The first thing happened in October. I was at the desk around 2 in the morning, and I noticed on monitor 2 that the far corridor of building C was lit. Not the whole building, just the far section, down by the units in the 200s. Lit, and nothing moving in it. Now, that can be normal. Motion lights time out. So if a tenant came in at 1:30, walked down to their unit, and was standing inside it out of frame, that corridor stays lit. Tenants have 24-hour access. It's a selling point. It's on the sign. So I did exactly what I was supposed to do, and I pulled the gate log. Last entry in, 11:40 p.m. Unit 214. No exit. I pulled the camera on the front gate and rolled it back. At 11:40 there's a car. Dark sedan, I couldn't tell you the make, headlights on. It pulls up to the keypad. The arm goes up, the car goes through. Then I rolled forward, and at 11:52 the same car comes back around to the exit lane and the arm goes up and it leaves. Which is fine, except the log has no exit on it. And the arm going up means somebody entered a code. I told myself the system dropped an entry. Software does that. I wrote it up in the paper logbook as an equipment fault, because that is honestly what I thought it was. Then I went and did my 4 o'clock walkthrough. Building C was completely empty. The corridor by the 200s was dark. Unit 214 was closed with a green padlock on it. I went home at 6 and slept fine. It happened again 9 days later. Same thing. Far corridor of C lit around 2 in the morning. Gate log shows an entry at 11:40 p.m. Unit 214, no exit. 11:40, the same minute. I want to be fair to myself, because I've turned this over a lot since. A reasonable person hears that and thinks somebody's got a routine. Plenty of people have routines. My grandfather ate dinner at 6:10 every night for 40 years. Some guy rents a unit and swings by twice a month at 20 to 12. That isn't strange. That's just a person with a schedule. The part that was strange was the exit. Over the next 6 weeks it happened 4 more times. Every single time. And at 11:40 p.m., Unit 214, no exit locked. Every single time the gate camera showed a car come in and a car go out. And every single time I pulled the corridor camera for Building C and watched the entire span between those two timestamps. I never saw a person in that corridor. Not once. I watched hours of that footage. I watched it sped up and I watched it in real time. Lights on. Empty corridor. Lights off about 40 seconds later. Nobody walks in. Nobody walks out. I brought it to Dale. This is a part I still think about. I said something like, "Look, I think the gate system's dropping exits on 214 might be worth getting the vendor out to look at it." And Dale, who was a completely normal man, mid-50s, talked about his boat constantly. Dale looked at the printout for maybe 2 seconds, handed it back to me, and said, "Don't worry about 214. I said, "Is it a staff unit or something?" He said, "It's paid up. Just leave it." Then he started talking about the boat. I found out later, from the woman who ran the office accounts, that Unit 214 had been on the books since 2003 on an auto draft that had never once bounced. Nobody working there had any idea what was in it. And Dale had told her the exact same thing he told me. Okay, so here's the night it stopped being an administrative curiosity. Early December, a Friday. Cold enough that I remember being annoyed about having to go outside at all. 4 o'clock walkthrough. I did A, then B, then I badged through the door at the north end of Building C. The lights over my head came on. Normal. And the lights at the far end of the corridor were already on. I stood there. I'd seen that on the monitor plenty of times by then. But standing inside it is a completely different thing, because from where I was that corridor ran about 250 feet, and there were 3 banks of lights between me and the lit part, and all 3 of those were dark. So I did the sensible thing. I called out. I said, "Hello? Site staff, anybody down there?" Loud. Twice. Nothing came back. And then the far bank went off, and the bank in front of it came on. I need you to understand what that means, because it took me a second and then it hit me all at once. Those lights are not on a timer sequence. They're motion sensors. They come on when something moves underneath them. The far bank going dark and the next one lighting up means something had moved out of the far section and into the next one. Something was walking toward me, and I could see exactly where it was, because it was switching the lights on as it came. And I could see exactly how fast it was moving, because the banks came on one after another at a completely steady walking pace. And I could not see a single thing underneath any of those lights. It got to the second bank from the door before I moved. Then I went back through that door, and I badged it shut, and I walked. I want to say walked. I ran back to the office, and I locked it. And I sat there and watched Monitor 2. On camera, Building C's corridor lights came on and went off in sequence, all the way up to the north door, and stopped. The corridor was empty on camera the entire time. I didn't do another walkthrough that night. I wrote 0400 walkthrough complete, all secure in the logbook, which was a lie, and at 6 I handed off to the morning guy and drove home and sat in my car outside my apartment until it got light. I quit 2 weeks later, gave notice properly, worked it out, didn't make a scene. Dale said thanks and shook my hand and never asked why. I've always thought that was the strangest thing he did. Here's the last part. This is the part that's never sat right. On my final shift, I printed the full gate log for my entire run at that site. 8 months of it. I don't totally know why. I think I wanted the 1140 thing on paper so I could look at it later and satisfy myself it had been a glitch. I went through it at my kitchen table about a week after I'd left. The 1140 entries were all there. All Unit 214. No exits. Exactly the way I remembered them. And there were 9 other entries I had never seen. 9 nights, scattered across those 8 months. An entry logged sometime between 2 and 4 in the morning, and the code used was mine. 4 of them were on nights I wasn't scheduled to work. I checked those 4 because I'm the kind of person who checks. On one of them, I was in a bar 60 miles away in the town I grew up in. There's a car transaction at 11:51 p.m. and another one the next morning at a gas station on the way back. I never told anybody at the company. I don't know what I would have said. I hadn't taken anything. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had no explanation. And the honest truth is I didn't want one badly enough to go back there and ask for it. That was 11 years ago. I don't rent storage. When I moved houses, I paid a moving company to hold my things for 6 weeks, and it cost me almost 3 times what a unit would have, and I paid it without thinking about it twice. And if I'm ever in a building with motion sensor lighting, a parking garage, an office on a weekend, anywhere, I won't walk down a corridor if the far end is already lit. I'll stand there and wait for it to go dark first. I don't know what was in Unit 214. I don't know who was using my code. And I've made my peace with the fact that I'm never going to.